Great. So good afternoon, both to Sweden and India. It's 12:30, 2:30 in India. And we are going to start our second sustainability dialogue. Now, this process and this product is something that came about quite naturally from a discussion that we had in November with the Swedish Chamber of Commerce in India. We started talking about the challenges and opportunities green transition means for industry. And sustainability often can be a very overwhelming and less than concrete subject. So we thought with this series of dialogues, to start pushing industry to walk the talk. I ask everyone who is not speaking to go mute to help with the discussion. Great. So I will say hello from Sweden to Business Council. My name is Arti Davis. I'm the Senior Vice President. Together with me, I have Sarah Larsson, who's the head of the chamber in India. Sarah will be also speaking in the panel discussion. And what we want to do today is bring some of our industry leaders to the table to share with you some of the questions that everyone has when it comes to sustainability with focus on green transition. This, of course, means energy, but it also means technology and skilling. Setting a strategy is one step. Deploying the strategy on a day-to-day basis is another more operational logistical challenge. How does industry meet that challenge? To start us off today, we are very happy to have Linda Andrén set the stage. Linda is the VP of Business Development and Sustainability with Gunnebo, but she's also a board member of SIBC. So we're really happy that Linda is here to share some of the challenges, opportunities, and best practices she has seen in her time with Gunnebo. So Linda, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm also happy to be here as this dialogue, and I really think that we should utilize the time to share and to get from nice, promising words to actions. And I do think that the IPCC report released Monday with the presentation of General Antonio Guterres for the United Nations Secretary actually put a sense of urgency to these discussions and dialogues. I mean, he used words like, we need to stop burning our planet and start investing in abundant renewable energy all around us. And that makes the topic of today even more relevant and urgent. And he also elaborated upon the responsibility we have, not only from government, but also for all of us, but specifically for businesses. And he was even saying that business leaders are saying things, but are not doing what they say. So simply put, they are lying. And I think that's are really strong words. And for me, it's really important that we go to actions. And here it might be different for different sizes of companies. We have different opportunities with the skill sets internally. But we need to take action, and we need to take it now. And we should not only look at our own legal entity. I do think it's important that we also look through the supply chain and take responsibility for the product and how the product is made, not only in our own entities. So I hope that the discussions today will also cover these aspects of actually being. This work is not easy. It's a lot of things we need to do, and it could feel overwhelming, but I hope that the dialogue like this one will be very supportive. So that's what I think is setting the stage, and I really hope for engagement and good dialogue in this.
Absolutely. And Linda, when we had spoken earlier, we'd also talked about when you say about these, very, very harsh words of the IPCC saying industry is lying. It's also about how do you package your narrative so that people can actually believe what you say when you say it. Talking too soon is as bad as talking too late without all the audience coming on board. And for our panel discussion to discuss this, we have great speakers here today. We have Akula Rahman, who is the head of sustainability and CTO for Hitachi Power, one of the key movers and shakers, I think, in the energy transition that India is facing today. We have Arvind Patel, general manager of the Nasik branch of Epiroc, and we have Dr. Professor Janssen from KTH in Sweden. Before I ask all of you to give us a few words of introduction to yourselves, just to set the stage for today, it's talking about how India can actually make this transition. Now, the IPCC, of course, sets a very overarching, if you would, if I could say very honestly, helicopter view of what the challenge is. We need to bring it down to basics. We need to make it operational for all of us in the room here today, and to help us see how can we actually move forward in taking these challenges on, and what are the steps we can take from strategy to deployment, what's the role of technology, and what's the role of skilling to actually create these green jobs to make these commitments possible. I'm going to start with Akilur from Hitachi Power to give us a quick introduction, Akilur, and then I might ask you a question follow-up before we move on to Arvind.
Yeah, thank you, Aarti. I was very glad to be here in this forum and also sharing my experience and views on this. Also listening to the many of the stakeholders who are in this journey of carbon neutrality. So I'm Akilur Rahman. I'm CTO for Hitachi Energy India. Have been with ABB and Hitachi Energy for more than 33 years, starting with the space of electrical power systems. The carbon neutrality, the energy transition is very close to my heart, and also I have been working towards it both from the core technology as well as digital transformation point of view, and how, especially looking at the industries, the utilities, infrastructure, how they can adapt the technologies and make it more sustainable. With that, I think we'll get back to the question and answer, but I think it's very important that, as Linda also said, on one hand, as Hitachi Energy, we are developing this technology, providing these technologies to the industry utilities. But very important that walk the talk. So that's what we do internally for our operation. So we have also announced by 2030 our carbon neutral goals, and especially in India, we also achieved the fossil fuel free electricity by end of last year. We already achieved it, 100% fossil fuel free electricity, and we are on the path to work on the other goals. So here it needs also collaboration among different stakeholders, as we are talking about the value chain of our operation, and where we have suppliers, we have customers, we have other stakeholders. Similarly, if you take any industry, any infrastructure, I think everybody has to address that. So that way it creates a larger pool of collaboration platform where we have to learn from each other and support each other to achieve this goal. And I'm sure with the core technologies of energy, renewable energy penetration, you talk about how we can integrate that in the grid, and how we can address the electric mobility, storage of energy in terms of battery storage, hydrogen storage, pumped hydro storage, and also making the grid still stable, because a lot of transformation, a lot of changes are happening in the grid. So very important, we work with each other. The technologies are there, the digital transformation is there, where we can monitor it in real time. What we have set the target, how it is improving, and it's a continuous, it's a journey. As we see that it's journey towards 2030, 2050, 2070, I think, to achieve this carbon neutrality in steps. So that's what I would like to say, and we can have question and answer later. Yeah.
I think you touch upon some really good points, and I think the hashtag walk the talk will be the hashtag for the dialogues, and has been the hashtag actually for the dialogues. It's to actually take these commitments and these 2030 goals and actually make them achievable. And with that, I'm actually going to come to the operations side of the discussion of sustainability, and that's Epiroc. Arvind, over to you for a quick introduction.
Thank you for giving this opportunity. A very interesting platform for sharing thoughts and learning from people. My name is Arvind Patil. I am General Manager for production facility at Nashik for Epiroc. We build construction and mining equipment here in this premise. About 250 strong workforce. Epiroc as a company is having a huge commitment towards CO2 reduction. We have a very clear strategy, guideline, and goals set for 2030, that we have to cut down our CO2 by half, whether it is from our production, whether it is from transport, or whether it is at our vendor place. So strategy or KPI guideline is well in set. We have been working on it for last 2 years. Quite a few low-hanging fruit, so-called, we have achieved, which are manageable within our premise. I would say easier thing to do. Simple monitoring can reveal, so many leakages that probably you can plug in. You involve people, they come up with a brilliant idea, and those ideas can help you reducing quite a few energy consumption or unwanted energy consumption areas. And as our CEO, she is also having a big commitment, a huge commitment, I would say, Helena, that she will invest or she will approve minimum 2 investment approvals towards CO2 emission reduction. Under that, we have made a proposal for investing in a solar, and we could get that proposal approved within no time, and it's going to get commissioned within this week. That will put us in a almost carbon neutral factory. 100% of our consumption will be coming out of renewable energy. So that's a quick one from me.
Thank you. And also, of course, the standards that you've set and the commitments Epiroc has made is from 2019 levels, as I understand. So it's raising the bar plus in terms of setting the ambition levels quite high. And that's something we'd like to come back to, I think, during the course of the discussion. Our last but not least panelist is Professor Jansson from KTH, who is a long friend of SIBC's. We have been on many delegations together and had lots of time to discuss the real opportunities that we have when it comes to skilling for our energy future. Kalle, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, and then we go into the discussion.
So my name is Carl Gustav Jansson, and I've had a long history at KTH. I started studying there in 1975, actually. I'm a professor emeritus now in artificial intelligence, but I will not speak a lot of that. For over time, I had various tasks, and I've been engaged a lot lately in our internationalization affairs from the sake of KTH, and also lately on how we can contribute more to the topic of skilling. So having said that, I would say KTH is a traditional technical, I would say, top university, and our traditional business model has been to educate diploma engineers, 5-year diploma engineers for the Swedish industry, plus doing research. But of course, all the time we had something what we in Sweden call the third mission, that we also as a university has a role of, on top of these basic things, also contributing to industry and society. So for sustainability, I would say we had a dramatic change in the last decade. So I mean, like 15 years ago, it wasn't a big thing. But over this last 15 years, there's a big change. We have a lot of roles, we have a lot of units, we have a lot of centers. As one example, for example, I mean, traditionally, we educated civil engineers, most only, or diploma engineers. Now, half of the students on the 2 last years on the master's level are not from Sweden, they are international students. So this means that we have a lot of students that we educate on the master's level. We have around 60 programs on that level, 2 years. And 9 of them, if I've counted right, are very clearly focused on sustainability. On top of that, I would say we've also seen a transformation of our all other courses in this direction. So, I mean, I can tell you a story. I was once in Latin America and met the alumni chapter of KTH in Colombia or something. And then I met a lot of students, and almost all of them have taken, this was 5 years ago, have taken our sustainability program at KTH. And it was kind of interesting for the purpose of skilling what they said when they come home to their home country. Initially, it was difficult to get the right job for them because the industry there at that point, 5 years ago, wasn't really into sustainability. But then 3 years later, they managed to really utilize their knowledge from the master's program they took at KTH and in the local industry. So we're doing things already on that plane, but personally, I think we can do more. We can do more contributions to skilling, and I have a few ideas on what we don't do at the moment that I spare for the discussion.
Great, Kai, thanks so much. And before we get into the discussion, I'm just going to reach out to the audience that we have. The purpose of these dialogues is to be as interactive as possible. We want to actually hear from you and hear your questions, hear your comments. So please do raise your hand if you have any questions or comments. There is no time for that during the course of the conversation. And if you feel comfortable, please go online on video so we can see you as well to have an interactive discussion. So with that, I'm actually going to start with Linda, because Linda, you have to leave us a little bit early. So I wanted to ask you from a Gunnebo perspective, you touched upon walking the talk and the industry responsibility for sustainability. When it comes to Gunnebo on your supply chains, what does this mean for you in terms of meeting your sustainability goals?
First of all, for sure, the code of conduct is we have it both for supply chain, internal.
Yes. Yeah.
Linda, I think you're on mute.
Sorry. I started to say that with for us, code of conduct is very important. So we have since many years a code of conduct implemented, and it's not only for the supply chain, but also for internal, for ourselves for sure, but also for our partners, companies that are representing us. So I think that is the foundation for it. But then for us, we are, I mean, when it comes to measuring the carbon dioxide and the greenhouse gases, we started, as you should, with the internal, with our legal entity. So that is what we have been doing, and we have been doing that for many years. But now we set out to really reduce in accordance with the targets that are communicated also by Gunnebo. But this is still for our legal entity. So we are at the stage where we will define how much we will include from scope 3. And I do think this is to come from the nice word to action. It's not easy. It's a lot of data, and also to have the support in systems. So we have been reporting earlier in our financial tool. And I guess that's what many companies do, either track this by Excel or in a system that is not made for the purpose. And now we are implementing a new tool to support us with it, and also to build a foundation to be able to be more transparent. But this is going to be a massive work for us.
But Linda, when we'd spoken actually in November and talked about similar issues, you made a very important point that I think is valuable to reconfirm and reiterate here, is the time it takes for industry to make this change can often be seen by the outside as no action taken. Because you need to be responsible when you communicate change. How does someone like Gunnebo transition that balance between taking internal steps and communicating external action?
So I think this is where I urge our colleagues internally to avoid greenwashing. This is, I do not want us to communicate things that we cannot deliver upon. On the other hand, you need to be bold and set bold targets to drive the action. So I do think the communication needs to be fact-based, and you need to have the proof. So that's why sometimes it feels like you're not communicating the actions. But then what we are trying is to work with storytelling, and it's also to create the engagement internally. So we are trying to bring forward the success cases. And it should not only be the big ones, big investments, because that's just a signature on the paper and a money transfer, but also the smaller things, so that because everybody should be engaged, and if we can unleash the power of the organization, we can do much more compared to if it's done by, I think like the sustainability manager title, I think we talked about that earlier. It could be an excuse. Someone else will do it for you. And here we are trying to have, actually all manager has targets within sustainability. So we really need to get them all engaged, and then all our colleagues. So we are sharing success cases internally, and we are sharing more internally compared to what we do externally, because we need to also to be able to verify the facts.
I think with that, I'm actually going to move to Arvind and this internal building when it comes to getting the team to deliver on the operational day-to-day and setting the strategy from low-hanging fruit to high-level achievement and expectation. Arvind, in Nasik, you've made some comments about what you're doing on the ground to kind of walk that talk. Tell us more about that and how you're actually making the changes at different levels of ambition.
Yeah, as it is said, people make it happen. So all you need is, give people an idea or a platform to share their idea, and they deliver the result. So this is how it started for us 2 years back. We had a few projects running in, a lot of idea came in, and we have a very strong team who deliver it also. Like few of the ideas, like we started monitoring our power consumption day and night, and then interestingly, we could see a few unwanted use of power during night, and that started a thought process, so where all we can save. Then all high power consumption gadgets, we started putting a little bit of automation, may not be a very high end of automation, whether we put inverters with timers, or timing change, or even changing all lights, conventional lights with LED lights. Also finding out from our power station which are the gadgets that can be disconnected from a load, which are consuming some power at idle load. So these are quite a few small ideas that we have been working on, which gave us I would say a substantial benefit. Last year we have grown 40%, and last year our production mix was mostly electrical power consuming equipments, but still our electricity consumption units were at par with previous year. Theoretically, we can say we could save 40%, within our premises with this small idea. Those were brought up by our brilliant employees, and then there are team, who's also making it possible and executing it. But then yes, it is manageable because it is within premise, and we could handle it pretty efficiently.
I think I just want to touch upon that comment you made about 40% growth, but no growth in emissions. I've been working on the Sweden-India corridor for some time, and in the early days of smart cities, we came to India talking about how Sweden has managed to decouple growth and emissions. And what you're saying, Arvind, is India has managed to decouple growth and emissions, and Epiroc has actually got a case study in how that's been done. And I think that's exactly the kind of packaging and the narrative we want to take from discussions like today, is that if it's done right, it can be done anywhere. I think that's a really good point. But you touched upon the team and the way in which the team has to deliver on these results and the goals that the company has set. And that comes to skilling, and that comes to strategy deployment on a day-to-day level with the employees. And here I want to reach out to Akilo and Kale, because Hitachi has a number of connections now with academia. You've talked about the different ways in which R&D is being developed in India with the IITs and I think NIS, smart grid development, looking at energy transition, electric cars, green buses. And why is Hitachi doing that? What is the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, so that's very important question or point. For us, for everybody, actually, sustainability should be actually behavior, not additional act. That okay, we act now and then have some project, complete it, we are done. It has to get into the behavior of each and everybody in the organization, in the society. So that's why we strongly believe in social innovation platform, where all the different stakeholders can learn about this, be aware of the technologies, what can be implemented, how it can be also run as a project, and what kind of new ideas can come in, which will help us to achieve this target early, faster. So I'll give 3 examples of our academia, the collaboration what we have. So we started with IIT Madras in partnership with Ashok Leland to set up a electric bus charging infrastructure inside the campus. So they have buses running inside the diesel, buses running inside that. So we are setting up. It will be ready in a month or so with electric bus charging. How the campus can be more greener, reducing the footprint. But more than just the operation in the campus, but also we are setting up an innovation platform where the students, the researchers, the faculty, the partners, they can come in, they can see what's happening, how this can be improved, how this can be adapted in other parts of the society. And the students, the researchers, the faculty, they should take the data out of this, identify some problem statements, improvement statements, work on this. So that is how it will get into the behavior of each and every academia employees, that okay, we need to address it and we need to continuously work on the improvement areas. And the second example is with NIT Warangal. We have set up the Smart Electric Grid Laboratory, where we are creating use cases of how the renewable energy can be integrated into the grid and how that can be managed effectively, how the the entire energy transformation, digital transformation can be integrated to make the grid more smarter, and including different elements of carbon neutral technologies. And the third example is IIT Roorkee, where we set up a smart electrical distribution system with different sources of energy, solar, the hydel, and also from the grid. Also having a storage to demonstrate how this all these different sources of energy can be integrated. The energy can be stored with microgrid concept. And finally, also how this can be connected with a smart campus, smart and sustainable campus, including how you can monitor the mobility in the campus, the water, the wastewater, energy, of course. This is what the platform. So we call it collaborative monitoring and analytics center on top of the microgrid and smart campus. So these are the examples where it not only helps the institute to achieve the carbon neutrality, but also helps to inculcate the habit of looking at this problem, making it aware, and also working on the future areas of improvement for this. There we also involve our employees who are volunteers there, who teach the students, who also interact with the students, researchers, and faculty on this topic, so that we can collaboratively work on new areas to improve it. And also we are now encouraging the institutes to adapt or adopt some of the schools nearby, primary, secondary, higher schools, where they can also work towards making them model school, where there will be renewable energy, where there will be more greenery, so that the students, the early age students, they can also learn about the carbon neutral concepts. So this is how we are supporting. And within the organization, of course, all the employees, we are engaging in different initiatives for the customer, towards the society, as well as our own operation. As I said, we have the
But on
goal
the,
for 2030.
sorry, I'm going to just interrupt really quickly, because you mentioned these tie-ups with IIT Madras, but does Hitachi then have a buyback for the commercial outcomes of these R&D initiatives? Is there an interest then to bring it into the system and actually take on the findings that you receive from the different partnerships that you currently support? Okay. So we are not getting into the commercial phase immediately. We would like to create this platform so that freely, openly, the faculty, the students and researchers, they can come forward, discuss. Of course, eventually when it gets into specific technology development, and that doesn't mean also that we are the only one to be innovating, co-creating with the institute. There will be other industries, but we are creating this platform so that the future, in future, this can be used as creating some of the intellectual properties to address this problem, and so that it can be sustainable, it can be more, monetized, so that it can be supported. Yeah. Exactly, and that's the technology and skilling gap that we touched upon earlier as well. And I want to come to Kale on that, because not only is industry responsible for taking care of the internal employees, but like you said, Carlo, making the case of sustainability more widespread. And it's important also to it has to make good business sense, because if it doesn't make good business sense, then the chances are it's going to go forward is much more diminished. But I think Kalle has touched upon in our discussion earlier about the way in which we can reach out to the supply chain. We can create the sustainability mapping beyond the industry to help create knowledge, like you said, Carlo, not just with the volunteers and the academic students, but actually with the vendors who have regulatory challenges to meet in this new landscape of climate change and sustainability. Kalle, KTH is doing a lot of work in the industry academic mapping and partnership. Can you speak to that for a few minutes?
I would say the big problem, as I see it, is not the big players. It's not the market leading companies. It's not the top technical universities. I mean, we work with IIT Madras. I mean, I guess these kind of actors have a tendency to work together, and I think it's fine. But for this topic we discussed today, I think the market leading companies has come rather far. They may be some more homework. For top universities, it will also some be more, but the big issue is the whole system around. So for industry, it may be what you call the supply chain or the second tier or whatever, the whole ecosystem of subcontractors around. And for example, KTH has given commissioned education to, but always to big companies, mostly, I mean, who can afford to pay. So I see there is a challenge for the smaller companies to do this transformation because of lack of resources. Both with, of course, the transformation in such, but also the reskilling of the personnel in the smaller companies. So there I can see that would be nice to have a collaborative effort between the bigger players to also create models that make it possible for the smaller players to make this transformation. Also, there is an issue in education, because in Sweden we have 30 universities and we have like 5 technical universities roughly. It's pretty homogeneous. So we don't have a big issue. While in India, you have 1,000 universities. And I mean, every state has a technical university. And I know from Kerala, there are like 100 colleges and 1,000 technical engineering students in each college. So 100,000 students are educated. And not all these colleges have the quality or the resources to keep up the right quality in engineering. So, and they constitute, if you then multiply with the number of states in India, you have a huge number of entities where you also want a transformation to take place. So these colleges also produce engineers that come out and are also state of the art in this respect. So that I can see the other challenge, and it would be very nice also to devise models where the top universities and the industries together create models where you can help the smaller entities also in the education ballpark to scale up or improve the quality in a scale. So those are my 2 issues, I mean, that I find high priority that we don't do well at the moment, actually.
I'm actually going to ask Arvind, and of course, Akilo, if you have any comments on Kalle's point, because when we talked earlier, you also touched upon the way in which you work with your vendors. Now, Epiroc has higher than average regulatory processes that you follow, higher than the expected outcomes from India at this stage, but you have to pass on this expectation to your vendors. Now, Kalle is talking about how, reaching out and trying to help inform them and actually reaching out to create that capacity building that they might require. What are your thoughts on that?
Right now our focus was a little bit internal. That is what we have within this premise, or products those we manufacture or we design. Real challenge, I agree with Kalle that it will be when we go to tier 2 vendors. I don't see a challenge. They themselves have their own systems and mechanisms to control this or monitor emissions. But when you go to a mid-scale industry, there it's going to be tough, definitely. Right now, there is no mechanism where we can really evaluate them or measure them, but it's there in plan. We have an audit process where our team visits certain, say, major vendor, and we definitely take a call on their systems safety people and environment aspects. Though we have not set any norms yet, soon we will be starting, putting a norms or our requirements with this vendor on their measurement of, emission and plan to reduce those emissions. Right now, it is still on a back burner for us. Too much to do with our own, activities before we go to a next level.
But that's something that's in the plan right now for the future.
Yes, it is there on the plan. Definitely, it is there in our KPIs also. And we have a few ideas. One of the ideas, as I said, is going to be, having a hand holding. We can have a cluster of vendors. We can impart a training to them, what we do, how we do, and what are the benefits, in for the business and for the, CO2 for reduction also. So we will be working on that. Right now, I won't say we have made any major breakthrough there.
These are steps to the future. Akila, you had your hand up. Sorry, you had a comment on that.
Yeah, so I fully agree with Kale that when we have this kind of collaboration with big companies and also the big institutes, so we are remaining in that space here. That's exactly what we also thought. It could be leading to that, but our first approach was that let's do it through academics, through university institutes, because that's how we can spread it faster. The second thing is we are also encouraging, as the example I gave with NIT Warangal, that these institutes, we will also fund them in as part of our corporate social responsibility, that these institutes having the platform set up there, they should now engage the colleges, schools around, or maybe in that area, the other technical institutes who can come forward and have the platform there so that they can start also innovating. So not only academics, but also, let's say, a lot of suppliers, vendors, small scale industries, MSMEs, so they will be around in that area. So they can come and without any financial obligation, without any commitment, they can see, they can feel what is this, how they can contribute with their products and solutions towards the market. So that's the idea, social innovation, the concept of social innovation, that without any big investment by the different stakeholders, they can see, they can experience, and they can demonstrate their ideas. And then, of course, they can get into the business mode as soon as they see the business aspect of it in terms of strategy as well as monetization. So here it's very important. I think traditionally or conventionally we were always one-to-one. So let's say one company, Hitachi Energy or ABB, with one university, and we do some project, it's done. But we said no. I mean, by this we will create a platform and attract, invite others to come forward and do their innovation without any commitment, obligation.
Before, I just want to say that I just want to make a comment on the need for horizontal change and not just vertical change. And I think these examples are doing exactly that. Kyle, you had a comment on that as well.
No, I just want to mention one thing. I mean, there are a lot of things you could do and a lot of ideas. One thing is I had the pleasure personally to work with an MPTEL, which is an online network that is monitored by IIT Madras. Where the IITs of India produce high quality courses online that then could be taken by anybody, by any college student, and so on. And I think it's a great network. The thing with that though is it's not focused. I mean, it's just a lot of courses developed, and any student can take whatever they like, and so there is no really direction in the system. So what we discussed now lately and with IIT Madras is whether one can build on that basic concept and extend it. So you can have specific packages of courses that are developed together with industry to fulfill the needs and desire of certain technical sectors, which means you can still use the basic machinery, but these packages of courses are goal directed towards the actual needs for different sectors. And that cannot be done only by academia. It also needs to be done with industrial partners in each sector. So this is at least one idea what we are looking at the moment to see how we can contribute.
Well, I'm actually going to ask Arvin on exactly that, Kalle. Arvin, if there were industry-specific packages tailored to meet your needs for the vendors that you work with, offered outside of Epiroc, but actually offered by open access educational universities, was this something you would find valuable?
Yes, I'm very curious. I will reach out to Kalle on that and, see if we can collaborate with academia and help our vendors and help ourselves also, learning more on this topic. So
Okay. Yeah,
sure, I will reach out
interesting.
and fetch more information.
And the idea, of course, would be to basically universalize the education access beyond having it within Epiroc or Hitachi, and to actually give all individuals interested in actually learning more the capacity to go through the process that will be open source, I would imagine, Kalle.
Yeah, and also, I mean, traditionally, when we did commissioned education, it was very dedicated to one company. It was a private matter, so to say. And these courses were never spread and reused in the same sector. They were only used by that company. So, and you can do that, but if you want to scale up the effect and move faster, I think you need to have mechanisms to reuse these efforts. Also, not make them just company dependent, but more sector. At least sector
stakeholder supported as well, because finance and access to finance will be critical to make this both start, but also maintain robustness and sustainability.
Yeah.
I want to switch gears a little bit now, and I want to get a little bit more real in the walk the talk discussion. We've talked a lot about the internal development of skills within the company, but also and the supply chains. But now I want to look outwards, the external landscape and the clients that you work with, and how you actually work with the clients and the levels that you set for sustainability and your emissions targets and your greening the grid targets. And Akila, I'm coming to you on this because we've talked about what we're doing to try and meet these global goals. Now, a company like Hitachi is doing this in a very real everyday perspective with the clients that you work with. I will say, in my opinion, and only mine, take all responsibility for it, it could be seen that some of the clients you work with maybe don't move as fast as you do, and don't necessarily actually change and pivot as fast as you do. How do you work with these clients to actually meet the objectives you have as a company, but also help clients understand that there's business to be made here by moving into this green transition in a very real way?
Yeah, so there are different type of clients. I mean, different goals they have. I mean, we are seeing that especially in the industry sectors. So there's a lot of announcements about carbon neutral goal in by 2030, 2035, 2050. The utilities are yet to follow that. But I think with industries having this goal, because many of the industries, especially in India, we are seeing that. So they had a lot of captive power plants, their thermal coal-based power plants, gas-based plants, which were there to augment the grid power with their own power, so that the production is never affected, never interrupted because of power not available from the grid, or it is being disconnected or whatever. So these companies, like I mean, one example is a metal, large metal and mining company in India. So they are transitioning more towards renewable. So instead of the fossil fuel based generation they have co-located many times, also from the other locations. So they are moving more towards setting up the large renewable, power plants, power generation, solar, wind. And they have to get that power. If it is not in the same location, obviously you have the main plant, let's say metal steel plant, but then you will have limited space to put large solar plants. So they have some kind of hybrid arrangement where they have on-site, they also have off-site remote plants where they are generating this, but then the power is being wheeled through the grid. So how do they manage that? They are planning for storage because they would like to have availability of power for their production. So we as Hitachi Energy, not only in India, but also globally, we are providing storage, energy storage solutions, which can actually, it's not just trivially, storing the energy in battery and then, using it, but it has to work with the dynamics of the grid, with storage and with the dynamics, every millisecond counts. So where you have to ensure that the protection and control of the entire electric system, including storage, they are reliable, so they don't lead to any tripping of the circuit. So that's how we come in. Of course, we provide all the power conversion, integrate all the power conversion equipment, the solutions, and also the transformer, the switch gear, and the control, the automation, digitalization. That's what we do. And when it comes to the emerging areas of hydrogen, so there also we have solutions where we have the renewable power to hydrogen using electrolyzers, how it can be managed, including the electrical infrastructure, and then how it can be stored, and then it can be also used for the hydrogen. The green hydrogen can be used for let's say the storage of energy as electricity, and then augmenting to the system, the industry, or maybe to the grid, and also for the mobility and also process, for example. So this green energy produced, they can be also used in the process of steel making. We call it green steel. So these are the examples which are actually there in real. We have installed a lot of energy storage systems which are working reliably, and they are also they have reduced the carbon footprint drastically. At the same time, they are much more reliable. The interruption of the power is not there. And then we have installations in Australia, in Europe, and some of the islands in USA.
Yeah, because as you're saying, greening the grid is a great concept in an overarching perspective, but the day-to-day balancing the grid is very tricky. So you need multiple accessory solutions like battery storage, like you say. But I want to reach out to everyone on the panel and talk about the market, because when you're talking about green transition, there needs to be a market demand for this. Of course, now, if we bring it now to India, that market demand was made very clear in the transition to solar. I think India was one of the first countries to create a really mature market for solar plants, both now, of course, ground-mounted, off-grid, solar rooftop, because there was local capacity, local market development, and local sales that could be handled very immediately. So in 5 years, with policy direction, the government played a large part in creating this ambition. You had the solar market, India leading the International Solar Alliance, for example. Now, I say this because we have hydrogen on the table. There's a very new discussion that we're talking about in the green transition. What steps do we need to take to make the solar story replicable, to create green transition in a very real sense? And Arvind, I'm going to come to you next as well. What do we need to see? I mean, and to create the confidence that solar generated.
Okay, the question is for me.
Yes, to begin with, I'm going to.
Okay, yeah. I think in India there's a lot of I would say buzz, but also the actions. You can see that a lot of projects are getting announced, and the one example, very good example, is that in the Himalayan region of Leh Ladakh, where you have very good solar irradiance available. So government is setting up, they have already announced 12 to 15 gigawatts of energy, solar energy will be produced there. And then we are also seeing now some of the tenders projects, they are coming up, for example, 5 gigawatts of the solar energy being transmitted also to the northern part of the country. So as Hitachi Energy, so where we play is basically how this 5 gigawatts of energy will be transferred from Leh Ladakh, the Himalayan region, to the northern of India, Haryana, near Delhi. So we are proposing a high voltage DC, HVDC line, because that is going to be better for reliable transfer of the power and also ensuring that the grid is stable. So the HVDC, as you know, as Hitachi Energy, we have installed many of the landmark HVDC lines in the country. The recent example is the Raigad-Pugalur, which is more than 1,600 kilometers and 6 gigawatts of energy which is transferred from central of India to the southern India. So it's again HVDC which Hitachi Energy has done. And from the northeast to Agra, that line is also there, the world's first multi-terminal HVDC line. So now this one, where it is not just the HVDC line, but also on the AC side in the Leh area, where you have a lot of, you'll have a lot of plants, solar plants, and they have to be connected. And there will be always, forecast of the energy, how they are going to produce, how much of energy they are going to produce. So how to make that, uncertainty and also the reliability of the power flow, and also the dynamic, the stability there. So the grid management is also going to be very important, where we'll have the distributed energy resource management system, the software, the hardware, how to control this power, along with the HVDC control, which is going to play a major role. I think with that, the generation, the transfer of the power, availability of power, and storage. So all these projects are there. They're coming up, and government is really, announcing this, and also they're supporting all the stakeholders to come up with the plan. Yeah.
So there's multiple things I want to take from that. And the first is, of course, proof of concept. To reduce this uncertainty, they have to see what's happening on the ground. And I think Hitachi has been doing that in a number of different ways when it comes to solar, but also now potentially with hydrogen that you touched upon earlier. But I want to ask Arvind about proof of concept when it comes to what you're working with in the machinery, in terms of what you're doing on the manufacturing level. How important is proof of concept to roll out the work that you do and the products you make that could be, of course, higher regulatory norms than India requires, but maybe also higher prices? So how do you work with your clients to actually provide the market arguments for sustainability and the green transition?
APROC anyway is having a very clear strategy and goal to offer a complete range of fossil-free fuel equipment. So we are working on designs where we have all large equipment, let it be 30-ton or 40-ton mine truck. Those are all working on battery. It's a huge success already. And if you ask, even in India, there is a demand. There are customers who are asking for this equipment upfront. It's unfortunate that battery technology is in a development stage, and probably we won't be able to cope up demand quickly. So there is customer here are pretty clear. We have Hindustan Zinc, who has already demanded battery equipment, and orders are placed. So I don't think from customer side they have probably a better outlook and awareness and demand for these equipment. It's a technology that is evolving, and hopefully it will get stabilized with the kind of whether it's a recharging or replacement of a battery. Those things are settling down. You said about even Government of India. I see n number of electrical vehicles are already there on road in India. And even I was visiting one of the vendor in tier 4 city, and I could see a battery charging station made available by this car manufacturer in a parking lot. So I'm sure this technology is going to happen. Even India also, government has also announced a policy and standards for EVs. So what kind of battery replacement, chargers, availability of chargers. So this technology will be at a very different level very soon. And probably, I think it will be a big success story. Picture will be very different in 1 year's time. We were also discussing about solar some time back. I would like to share one of the brilliant innovative idea that I have seen. It's a government efforts again. I was visiting one of the neighboring state. Whole water canal is covered with solar panel. You can only imagine length of that water canal. It's a free land available. You are protecting evaporation of water, and you have a space for solar panel. And these solar panels are there for last 10 years. Even in our premise, whatever solar installation we have done, we started about 8 years back. That time it was a very expensive technology and know-how was very less. Today it is probably a very normal available technology that we can have within city. Probably there are hundreds of vendor and knowledge available, for installing and maintaining solar panels and solar systems. So we have gone from 25 kilowatt, then 150, and now another 650 kilowatt that we are going to buy from, again, a locally produced equipment. That's a Tata Solar. That's a system we are going to install. So technology wise and customer demand wise, I don't see any challenge. For even other than solar, we have been offering equipment. Those are exceeding local legal norms. Like in terms of emission norms, whatever engine we have been using, those were always above a few steps ahead of local emission norm, and we have been selling it without any challenge. Customers are very well, receiving that technology and appreciating that technology.
And I'm going to ask you, I'm going to interrupt you because I'm going to ask you why. What are the customers hearing when you sell, and what are they seeing when you give them the products that you offer? They understand this is something that we need to be buying because it makes sense for us as we move forward.
Yeah, it's all, I would say, part of value-based selling that our marketing team has been doing. Probably, I don't want to take a credit on Epiroc. Many times customers are more educated than us, in these terms, and they are the one who's, pushing us that they will like to have this. So even our team also can, do that convincing. Even if you see in a ventilation fan where power consumption is very high, using a one-step higher efficiency motor, you show the calculation, customer get convinced that probably payback is less than a year, and they get convinced, to buy this equipment. There are advantage on both sides.
And I think that's a critical point you make, the return on investment, actually making business sense. So the concept of the green transition actually is not as difficult as we might have anticipated 10 years ago, where the returns on investment were not actually attractive, but especially with solar, potentially with hydrogen, we don't know yet, that market-based analysis and proposition becomes much more strong. And I think that's what you were touching upon, Akilo, but I also want to go to Kale. So proof of concept, trying to create the skill development that we need to meet the challenges that all these industry partners have. In the discussion that we've had just now, where do you see the opportunity to actually create an exponential transition?
I know, maybe I want to have a short comment on the other, because I thought you earlier asked about the market push, like here. And I think, for equipment, maybe it's easier, but for buying power, for a customer needs power, there are many power suppliers. And in Sweden, there are a lot of freedom theoretically, but it's a very complex system, which means it's not so easy for end customers to really have a grasp of which actor do what. So I think the complexity of the energy market, like in a country like, even a small country like Sweden, it prevents a strong market push. Even if the customers had a very strong priority, it's difficult for them to make the choices. So this is something one can need to work with if you want a stronger market push towards the actors. With respect to the skilling, I think I'd already more touched the two topics that are important. That it's difficult for all small actors today it's more difficult for the smaller actors to be part of a rapid transition, and therefore whatever you can do to help them, not just audit them, or you really need to create support system for the smaller actors in order to have a more rapid change actually than we have today. So
what we're about today, of course, is the industry-led green transition. Of course, what each industry is doing to kind of both internally and externally create real outcomes based on, of course, strategy commitments the industry has made and how these can be rolled out. But Kyle, you also touch upon the individual and how we as individuals sitting in this room today can actually understand and participate in this change. And I think both Akilo and Arvind have touched upon the work they do at the site level and at the industry level to get volunteers to come on board, to open access education and capacity building, to allow for more than just the industry to understand what changes can be made. Now, Arvind, you also touched upon, I think, earlier about the way in which you're working at the ground level to actually create volunteers to work with change management and sustainability. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so internally, we have been running a competition on energy efficiency. A brilliant idea came in. A few of them are yet to be executed. We also have been driving a CSR project where we have a quite enthusiastic employees who has been coming back to us, and we have been agreeing on investing into renewable energy, either solar heaters or electrical generating panels to needy community around. So it's a encouragement to employees or listening to employees make all the difference. So we give them a platform, idea comes in, we see that they are supported well in execution, and we have been doing it consistently for, I would say, last quite a few years.
This psychological safety for green change, I think, is something important that we've touched upon before. I think we'll touch upon again. And what comes to mind is that you have to create the kind of safety in the team to make the changes, allow them to actually adapt to the changes and how they can participate. What I didn't know was that the blur concept that Google has was actually invented by someone in India. And that's something that we use now, all of us largely, when we have conference calls, because they were actually allowed to have interactions for change management saying that, can we introduce this because it will help me in terms of how I have meetings. And Google actually opened this up across its geographic specifications. It's now global. We all use it, but it comes down to, like you say, Arvind, allowing everyone to actually have a voice, to actually say, we need to know, we want to be part of the change. We actually want to understand what change can be done. With that, I'm actually going to turn to Sarah, who is here from the Chamber. As you know, many of you, the Chamber is running sustainability mapping with your industry members and seeing what is actually happening on the ground and how industry is walking the talk. And we will be having another dialogue later on this year where that mapping will be shared with all audience members and all participants. But we're really happy to have the Chamber as a co-host and a co-partner to the dialogues and share our members and share our experiences. And this is the second, like we said, of the dialogue we've had in 2022. Sorry, you've been listening to us for the last hour now, having this discussion with the different industry experts that we have. We've touched upon many things. We've touched upon strategy. We've touched upon internal change, external change, and of course, some of the overarching requirements for market pushes, be it proof of concept, be it market incentives and mature technology. I'd like you to comment on what you've heard and what you'd like industry to take forward, facilitators to take forward, enablers to take forward.
Sure. Thank you, Arti, and thank you, Akilur, Arvind, and Kalle. And it's just been super interesting to listening to you, and Linda as well, who left us, but that started off really setting the stage with the new, referring to the new report that's come up that is really calling for urgent and immediate actions. I think, I mean, Arti, we are in the Chamber very happy to have these dialogues together across Sweden and India, and knowing and believing that there are things we can learn from one another. And one thing that I always are struck by when I hear representatives from Swedish companies in India speak is the engagement beyond your own company, that it always goes out into society, it goes into suppliers, it goes into families, it goes into schools, it goes beyond what you just do on your own site. And I think that's and I think that's something that just is spoken of as very natural, and like what Akilur and Arvind was talking about that as well, the whole thing of catching the small changes so that you can see actually the difference you can make, and that what in the end it leads to behavioral change, and that's what we're looking for from all of us, isn't it, in the small and in the large. So I think that's just something that I find, for, if I may, being a Swede, but being based in India since many years and seeing this, saying, how do we take some of that into the Swedish society, some of that engagement with community, with family, with beyond, and merging, which is very strong in India and maybe more than in Sweden, but that's maybe up for discussion. Maybe someone wants to challenge me on that part, but there's just also a personal reflection after my time here. I was thinking on the whole, since we were talking about skilling and the need, Kalle was talking about the role of sustainability that is now integrated into a lot of education from the beginning, and what a need there is for cross and multifunctional skilling and understanding of those that today are working in companies. And not only the technical skill and the innovation and that is happening there, and of course technical skills and technology is driving very much of the green transition, or must do, because we need new technology in order to see a change and a change from what we have used so far, but also more knowledge-based. If we look at, you have to have an understanding of ecology or biology, agriculture, geography as well, in order to actually work with these questions. And not only that, I think you also need to have a knowledge of sociology, because it also has an impact on society and people and human, as we said, human behavior, but also on a large scale. And then of course the soft skills that are needed in this, in order to merge all the different actors, work together, bring collaboration, find interactions on different levels, work with academia, work with your employees, work with suppliers, customer, create demand, and create also a work of trying to create a supply chain that is green. So I take back, Arti, a lot of points from today's discussion. It was just super interesting to listen and hear. And you mentioned the sustainability mapping that we've done here in India, and that we did the first on 18 companies based on the west side of India, Gujarat and Maharashtra. Now we're adding on another 35 companies from the rest of India. So we will have mapped out about 50 companies, Swedish companies, and their actions in India. What are they doing? And it's a very interesting, I think, report to look at, and a good learning and a good sharing point as well. And I think that's one thing as well. How can we learn from another? I think, Kalle, you talked about that as well. How can large players support the smaller ones? And I think that is really, I think, what we want to work with as well, of seeing how can the established companies, Akulur, Arvind and so forth, also be drivers and help what is happening in smaller companies around us, not only in the supply chain, but also horizontal with other Swedish companies and other companies from other markets as well. So thank you so much. It's been super interesting to listen to, and over to you, Arti.
Thanks, Erin. I was going to say, when we sat and discussed the dialogues and created these different events, you create these key words, but so much of what we talk about cannot be discussed in silo. They're overarching, they cross-fertilize, they have to come together. So even though we have this discussion on green transition, skilling, employment, capacity building, all comes into it every time we have discussions on sustainability and dialogues for the future. I want to ask the audience, that's been very quiet so far, if you have any questions, to raise your hand. But before and while we wait for that, I want to ask all our panelists. We have industry in the audience, we have government in the audience. I will not point out, but we do. And I'd like to ask you, if you were to ask for triggers for change, what you'd like to see in your ambition. All of you have agendas for 2030 and commitments for 2030, which is kind of the landscape that we're looking to develop towards. What would you like to see to help you transition and make your changes on the ground possible? Akil, I'm going to start with you.
So there, I think it's important, because everybody understands now the importance of carbon neutral and energy transition. I think it's very important now to each one of us, as industry, as organization, as individual, as a household. We have to calculate our carbon footprint. So there are tools available, of course, in the organization level. It's easy. I mean, many of us, we already have that reference level, whether it is 2019, and many of us have been also working in this area, sustainability and environment since many years, decades. But it's important to take the fingerprint, the current status of carbon footprint. Where are we in the organization, in the household? Actually, that's what we are doing, promoting with our employees, that, okay, I mean, there are tools available. You can calculate the carbon footprint of your household, whatever you do. I mean, that really gives a very good insight of where we can improve, where we can contribute towards reducing it, and also doing the same thing for the organization, for the clients, for the customer, and for the society. Yeah.
And it puts perspective on change. 75 gigawatts of solar transition are numbers that no individual can really comprehend. But if you start looking at your own carbon account, that number starts to take on a different level of perspective, and you can understand how huge a challenge this becomes and how every kilowatt is a move towards a greener future. Arvind, I'm going to come to you. What would you like to see to meet EPIROC's 2030 challenges? 2019 levels, hugely ambitious. What would you like to see from NASIC in terms of making that change exponential and faster?
If you say from government, our expectation, I would say government is already doing at its best the kind of encouragement we receive for solar installation. There are huge subsidies. Processes are simpler, getting approvals or getting it installed. Even for high efficiency engines, we have a clean fuel available nowadays locally from all pumps, so we can always go for a better technology engines that can be used in our equipments. Only probably it's a local state challenge that we have, that we still wish to buy a green energy from a grid. Most of our grid or especially around Nashik is thermal power. So we are trying to see if we can buy some of the green energy through grid. We are not able to make any big breakthrough there. It's a small percentage, but probably we have to get some help or some support and see if we can buy whatever increase that may come in future years. Obviously, we have to start buying green energy from grid because all our rooftops are full with solar. Probably we won't be able to invest any more solar in this premise. So that's the only small request we would like to have. And I'm quite positive in terms of even academia and training we have been discussing. We have been running family functions, on one of the day in our company. We call kids. We have a competition on environment topic. The kind of thoughts those are drawn by these kids are amazing. Means I'm pretty convinced and confident that our future is in good hands.
I think that's again something that we've heard now in the conversations we've had about the importance of industry and community working together and how that really creates robust change. And that comes from the bottom up as much as the top down. I'm actually going to move to Kale. Before I come back to you, Kale, I see that your hand is up. Kale, in terms of the ways in which you can actually fast track change, and technology and skilling have been raised multiple times now. What would you like to see happen in the next decade that we have towards 2030?
Actually, I have a very pragmatic remark. I mean, in my organization, as in many others, we have a lot of good seeds in this aspect on sustainability going on. The problem is that many times we want to change our organization, and we have many things. But the basic error we have done historically to say this is our core business. This is the classical old things we do, and everybody is rewarded or punished on their performance on the core business. And by the way, there are all these extra things we want you to do, but it's not given place in the organization, in our organization. So I think it's very, very important that we create individual space for people to really work on these things. So they are rewarded for that, also not only for the classical core things. So this I see as a main obstacle. We need to fix this if we want this to fly, even if we have a lot of good seeds at the moment.
Thank you. Akil, over to you.
Yeah, so it was very good question, or rather point from Arvind, that how do we have the renewable power, for the industry, for the plant. So this is something we have done already. As I said, by the end of the year last year, we achieved 100% fossil fuel free electricity. So that actually through the power purchase agreement, so we are buying the renewable power plus also offsetting, because many a times you have your plant, your operation in some of the states where this may not be available, but there are many industries here, the people who have joined here. I think I'm ready to provide some information about how we achieved it and what is the approach. And there are many companies who are actually providing this power renewable power with the contract, and how you can also do the offsetting of this as an interim measure till you achieve all the power purchase, carbon neutral or fossil fuel free power. So we'd be happy to provide any information, share knowledge about it.
I think
Thank
that's
you, sir.
exactly what we want to see from discussions like this. Sorry, Arvind, exactly kind of this sharing of best practice. Sorry to interrupt, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I will definitely reach out to you. We are very keen on, at how we can, strike that, how we can get it.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
And to all the audience here today, we will be reaching out to you after this webinar to get your feedback, to get questions you might have, to get comments you might have, or what you'd like to see in the future in terms of sustainability dialogues, but also best practice sharing in the white papers that we do, in the mapping that we do. But thank you so much for being here today, to all our panelists, to Sarah, to Karan from the Chamber, Cecilia and Robert from SIBC, and Nisha from SIBC as well. And we will be coming back to you at the end of May to discuss circular economy and the challenges and the opportunities in that. Have a very good day.
Thank you.